It's August 26, 2019. This is Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming. Let's roll. And welcome back to another episode of Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming. This is episode 0.22, and we are in a very good mood this week. Valve has launched Steam Play and is unifying Linux gaming with Windows gaming, or at least trying to, which is something that we have been calling for forever. Probably the best news that we could have for Linux, aside from maybe Half-Life 3, being a Linux exclusive. So that's terrific. We're going to focus on that as our focus on topic. I know that's big news. I'm going to put that down into the focus on topic and continue with the regular cadence of the show, which is our news feeds. We're going to take a look at the 396.54 driver, the NVIDIA driver. If you don't have it, you should upgrade to it ASAP. It provides some significant performance improvements. We're going to take a look at some stories about the vulnerabilities in the Linux code base. Then we're going to run Windows 95 on our desktop here as an Electron app. We're going to take a look at that project. We're going to go through our discovery queue, a short one this week, and then jump right into our focus on Steam Play. We'll be right back in 10 seconds. And we're back. All right, let's start off with our non-sponsored video this week is Warhammer 40,000. I've got 401,000 here. Easy mistake to fix. Warhammer 40,000 Gladius Relics of War, which is a civilization-like game, but in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It is native Linux, and we're going to watch the video here by Gaming Tux. The video is in German, so if you're not Deutsch, you may have some difficulty understanding it, but we like what Gaming Tux is doing. That is a German language focused Linux YouTube site. You can check them out on YouTube, Gaming Tux. Let's just start them up here.
Herzlich willkommen, liebe Freunde, hier zu einem kleinen neuen Angespielt-Video, und zwar hier mit Warhammer 40k Gladius Relics of War.
Right. He's got that straight. So we're going to leave that there for you guys with a lazy eye. You guys can, gotta take a look over when the screen goes a little boring. For those of you on the audio podcast, thank you for listening. We will tailor this podcast to audio. If you want to get the full experience, we're on YouTube, Twitch, and everything else. So, all right, let's just jump in here. First story this week is the NVIDIA 396.54 Linux driver offers big performance boost for frequent gamers. This is an interesting story out of Phoronix, one of our go-to sites. Let's jump on the link. Oh, bring it over here. Jump on the link. So this is from Michael Larabelle at Phoronix.com. The NVIDIA 396.54 driver provides a big performance boost for frequent gamers, and Michael has run some tests here across a number of different GPUs, the 1060, the 1070, and the 1080, across a number of different games. But what he has tested here is that, when you first start playing, if you take a look at your games, let's just take a look at BioShock Infinite here, you can see that you know, the boosts are not significant on an initial play. But for the first few gaming sessions, you're not going to see much. But as you continue to play the games, the GeForce GTX 1060, for example, and I'm reading from the website here, begins showing signs of improvement. A 14% boost in frame rate under Deus Ex Mankind Divided. That, ladies and gentlemen, is huge. Huge for a driver update, a 14% increase. And as Michael says here at the end, boom! After the first few rounds of games launching and closing, we now see the actual, quite sizable impact the resource leak had on silently driving down frame rates. That's around a 20% performance boost for Dirt Rally on the GTX 1080, as well as the GTX 1060. Obviously, the performance slowdown would come up if playing games frequently, or even just playing games occasionally, but seldom rebooting your system. So this is basically due to some kind of a memory leak for people that have persistent systems on where your computer is on and you don't reboot quite often. Basically there's a memory leak of some sort that drains the performance of your game. So if you are on anything other than 396.54, upgrade. Go to your AUR, or go to your software center, or go to your facility of choice and plug that in. .54 has shown up on my system here on Tergos just a couple of days ago. I've not done any testing, but yeah, you know what? Maybe it's worthwhile rebooting a game a few times to really get those performance benefits. But that is huge. The reason I bring that up as a driver story is just the performance improvements are incredible. That's almost like getting a new graphics card. I mean, that's 20% is significant and material. Second story this week is researchers blame monolithic Linux codebase for critical vulnerabilities. I saw this just an interesting story about, you know, how you get tied in to your design choice. And this article comes from Threatpost, interesting name. Let me bring it over here. So this is from Threatpost. It's a site dedicated to hardware and software vulnerabilities. Researchers blame monolithic Linux codebase for critical vulnerabilities. This is by author TerraTech on August 22nd. And Terra basically states here, in an exhaustive study of critical Linux vulnerabilities, a team of academic and government-backed researchers claim to have proven that almost all flaws could be mitigated to less than critical severity, and that 40% could be completely eliminated with an OS design based on a verified microkernel. And she goes on, the security benefits of keeping a system's trusted computing base small has long been accepted as a truism, as has the use of internal protection boundaries for limiting the damage caused by exploits, wrote researchers from Data61. Applied to the operating system, this argues for a small microkernel as the core of the TCB, with OS services separated into mutually protected components, in contrast to monolithic designs. The Linux operating system, which has 26 million source lines of code, contains most services within its kernel, which is the part of the system that executes the privileged mode of the hardware. This results in an explosive growth in the amount of privileged code. Any code executing in privileged mode can bypass security and is therefore inherently part of a system's trusted computing base. As almost all code is buggy and the number of bugs grows with the size of the code base, this TCB growth is bound to lead to growth of the number of vulnerability. So that's kind of the article there. Basically, the bottom line is that the design, when you design something and it gets as old, let's say, as Linux is, never mind Windows, you have expansion creep, and the kernel, which is effectively what Linux is, has exploded to 26 million lines of code. And if you're ever using your terminal and you need to pretty well type in sudo for everything, sudo puts you into protected mode. It's a privileged administrator mode, and the position here is basically that there are too many things that are privileged, and once you provide access to the privileged part of the kernel, then you are open to vulnerabilities. And so better design would be to keep the microkernel small and secure, and therefore eliminating basically what is privileged and has access to these key core components. A little esoteric, I agree, and not necessarily gaming related, but we are mostly gaming on mostly Linux. But I don't know, I found that as an interesting design point. I really hope there's a way to kind of fold into this, because you are going to get into difficulty as the kernel continues to grow, and you're not going to be able to have the kind of security that Linux is known for. In any case, our next story is a fun one. You can now run Windows 95 on your desktop as an Electron app. This is from OMG Ubuntu. I'm running it on my screen right now. You can see Windows 95 is an app right here. I'm on Arch, so this is in the AUR under Windows 95. Just search and you will find it there. On Ubuntu and the other distributions, I assume it's in your software center. But here we go. So I mean, this fella decided to build an Electron app to run Windows 95. For those of you on the video, you can see the screen here. I'm going to click the start, and it crashed. It crashed, so it did not run. I don't know what the problem. That is Windows 95. In any case, I'm not going to go back and try it through. Let's take a look at the article instead. That is so funny. It did run before, so I don't know why it crashed. It's possible that it is faithful to Windows 95, which was a crashy, buggy mess. But anyway, going from Joey Sneddon's article here on OMG Ubuntu, a developer by the name of Felix Reisberg has resurrected Microsoft's ancient OS using the power of Electron. Felix says, I put Windows 95 into an Electron app that now runs on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. It's a terrible idea that works shockingly well. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, he writes on Twitter. And we're not talking a fake experience or something just skinned to look like the real deal. This is a full-fat Windows 95 experience replete with all the apps, games, and other cruft that the OS is famous for, including the buggy, crashy mess. Yes, that includes Microsoft Paint, Notepad, and even a ridiculously early version of the Internet Explorer. It takes 64 megs of RAM. You can actually resize the desktop. It runs at 800p base, but you can move it up to, I think, 1200p is what when I was testing it. I mean, it's just basically, there's no reason to use that. Although, you know what, I had considered, would it be, like, could you run, like, DOSBox games in Windows 95? Windows 95 is, of course, based on MS-DOS, and you can run the command.com operation right in there. So I imagine that if you've got a DOSBox game and you've got the original executable and you run it in this Windows 95 app, it'll run in DOS mode in the app. I have not tested it. Somebody please do that and let me know. In any case, that's our news this week. We're going to be back in 10 seconds with our Discovery Queue. And we're back. Discovery Queue. We've got a couple of new games this week. First up is 7 Billion Humans. 7 Billion Humans by Tomorrow Corporation. This came out August 23rd, just a couple of days ago. Automate swarms of office workers to solve puzzles inside our very own parallel computer made of people. A thrilling follow-up to the award-winning human resource machine, now with more humans. Reviews are very positive. It's got 74 reviews. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Congratulations, all 7 billion humans on the planet. Here at your new job, we don't just work out your brains, we also work out your bodies. Are you ready? Let's go. One, reach it. And again. And out. And one, reach it. And again. And out. Out, and out. And they open, swing it out and land.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, it's indie simulation programming puzzle satire type game. I would say it looks like an interesting game for kids. If you've got kids and you want to teach them about how computers work, it might be a good way to do that. Not for me, but could be for a kid in your family. Our next game is called TerraTech. TerraTech, actually, let's just go back to 7 Billion Humans. That is $17.49, which is a little bit pricey, but TerraTech is even more pricey. That's $29. This game came out on August 10th, so it's a couple of weeks old. We missed it on the launch day. TerraTech is an open world sandbox adventure game where you design and build your own creations through a mix of crafting, combat, and discovery. Explore a hostile alien landscape or design with creative freedom. The choice is yours. Lots of reviews, almost 4,000 reviews for the game. Very positive. It's by Payload Studios, self-published. User-defined tags are building, sandbox, open world, robots, action. It seems a little unclear to me what it is. Open world sandbox adventure game where you design and build your own creations. Let's just take a look at the trailer here, see what it's about. All right, actually that looks kind of interesting. So basically, if I was to categorize this, I would say if you are a fan of Minecraft or those types of games, this is basically Minecraft for machines. You can basically build your own machines. You can make them look whatever way you want to look. You're kind of in this open world, and then you can go and fight with other people. Not for me, but I know a lot of people like this kind of stuff out there. It's TerraTech. It's $28. Probably not a bad deal if it's a well-constructed game and with the positivity in the reviews. So, you know, give it a shot. There's a creative mode as well. I'm just looking at the screen here. Definitely, I can say one thing. Definitely not for me, but your mileage may vary. And that's a Discovery Cube today. We're going to come back in 10 seconds with our focus on, which is the big topic of the week, Steam Play. I'll be back in 10. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us here on Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming episode 0.22 with our focus on topic, which is Steam Play. Now, most of you that are listening to this podcast know all about Steam Play because you listen to this because you like Linux gaming generally, or you just like gaming in general. But let's just kind of do the overall, okay? I'm going to go through some of the reporting on the story, and by that we will have a good sense of what this is all about. So let's start off with Boiling Steam. First of all, kudos to Boiling Steam. Boiling Steam does not write often enough on his website, which is boilingsteam.com. But it's one of my favorite sites out there. Just not a lot of production, but when he produces, he's got some good stuff out there. I'm gonna take our sponsored video out so we can have a bigger screen. Let's take a look at his first story here, because my views on this essentially line up with these views. But so this is August 22nd. It is interesting just to see how the reaction was out there when this came out. And this is Steam Play, August 22nd, Boiling Steam. Wow! As per my previous post, I was convinced Valve was onto something with the Steam Play leaks, but I was far from expecting such a quick rollout. Just a few hours ago, Pierre-Luc Griffet from Valve wrote a post on the Steam community forums explaining the whole work behind the new Steam Play, and this is very, very big. Probably the most important news for Linux gamers this year. Check out the whole announcement. I'm not going to go to the whole announcement because it has been checked by other people. This is the real thing. The real thing. You can from now on play a few selected Windows games in Steam through a Wine-based solution called Proton, directly integrated in the Steam for Linux client. But let's go through the most important points together. This is from Valve. So 2 years ago, we started an effort to improve the quality and performance of Windows compatibility solutions for Steam games. A lot of our work has been in the form of supporting Wine and other existing compatibility projects. Our goal for this work is to let Linux Steam users enjoy easy access to a larger back catalog. We think it will also allow future developers to easily leverage their work from other platforms to target Linux. This would give them the option of focusing on areas that would make a meaningful experience difference for all users instead, such as supporting Vulkan. Going back to Boiling Steam, note that they mention back catalog as the main focus. I think it will go beyond that, since future games could also be made to work with Linux without much porting effort. Note that the fact that they are pushing for Vulkan is great, since it should make the performance loss much less noticeable, if any. For developers, they have this message as well. This is from Valve. We recommend you target Vulkan natively in order to offer the best possible performance on all platforms, or at least offer it as an option if possible. It's also a good idea to avoid any invasive third-party DRM middleware, as they sometimes prevent compatibility features. So the original games that are whitelisted, so the way that Steam has done this is they have You have to be on the beta channel for Steam in order to have access to a setting in the settings called Steam Play. If you go to the Steam Play, you can there's a toggle there to remove the restrictions on Steam Play. With the restrictions, you can only access the whitelisted games which have been tested and are known to work. And so there's about, it looks like there's about maybe 20 of them here, including Fallout Shelter, Final Fantasy VI, Nier Automata, Doom, Tropico 4, Warhammer 40,000, Dawn of War. So there's a bunch of games that are basically going to just boom up and you're working. If you remove that toggle in the settings under Steam Play, you can basically then try to install any Windows game in Linux. Any game. And, you know, your mileage may vary, but it creates a path to future compatibility. So that was the big release that, you know, kind of as it came up. Let's take a look at the reaction from Phoronix. Michael Larabelle obviously was all over this too. Okay. So this is Michael Larabelle. No, actually, this is not the same story. So let me just kind of go back. So what has been happening is this came out August 22nd, and we are now on August 25th, and in that time, Valve has already provided its first update, and that's what this Phoronix story talks about. Valve offers up Proton Beta for testing Steam Play enhancements. Just in time for the weekend, Linux gamers, Valve has made available a Proton Beta update channel for testing out the latest enhancements for their fork of wine that also bundles in DXVK for accelerated D3, D11 over Vulkan and other performance compatibility improvements. With the current Proton 3.7-4 beta available today via Steam, there is Python 3 support rather than being limited to Python 2.7. DXVK has been updated to DXVK 0.7, but the D3, D10 support isn't yet turned on. Valve intends to maintain the Proton changelog along with the various other patches. Hopefully this beta channel will become more interesting with time. At the moment, there is little intersection between graphically interesting, demanding games that are running well today on Proton and those that are benchmark friendly with Steam Play, which is why I haven't run any benchmarks yet. But as more Windows games begin working on Steam that meet our testing requirements, there will certainly be driver GPU tests on Phoronix. If you run into any interesting, automated, friendly benchmark scenarios with Steam Play, feel free to share in the comments. So the first beta is out already for Steam Play. I'm going to editorialize a bit. I'm going to go through the stories first, and then I'm going to basically give you my thoughts in a little bit. But if you want to access the beta, go to your settings, or if you want to access the switch to basically allow all of the games, go to settings as I just did there, choose Steam Play, and then under Advanced, you can use Steam Play to test games. Just basically check off what says, can't talk today. Just check off where it says Enable Steam Play for all titles. Under the compatibility tool settings, which are new there, choose Proton 3.7-4 beta. And you're done. Okay, so we've got Steam Play, we've got the first beta. What else do we have? Well, Boiling Steam provided us with an interesting quote from John Carmack as well. This was very good and a very good find by Boiling Steam. And this was back in 2013. So, 5 years ago, Valve launched Steam for Linux for the first time, and John Carmack posted this on Reddit. I'm just going to basically read his entire quote here. It's a couple of paragraphs long. This is all from John Carmack via Boiling Steam. I wish Linux well, but the reality is that it barely makes it into my top 10 priorities. Burn the heretic! I use Linux for the flight computers at Armadillo Aerospace, but not for any regular desktop work. I was happy to hear that Rage ran in Wine, but no special effort was made to support it. I do get tempted to port to Linux for technical reasons. I would like to use Valgrind again, and NVIDIA has told me that some experimental GPU features I would like to use for R&D would be easier to prove out on Linux. Working on open source Linux OpenGL drivers again would also be fun, if I ever had the time. However, I don't think that a good business case can be made for officially supporting Linux for mainstream games today, and ZeniMax doesn't have any policy of unofficial binaries like id used to have. I have argued for their value, mostly in the context of experimental Windows features, but Linux would also benefit. But my forceful internal pushes have been for the continuation of id Software's open source code releases, which I feel have broader benefits than unsupported Linux binaries. I can't speak for the executives at ZeniMax, but they don't even publish Mac titles. They partner with Aspire. So I would be stunned if they showed an interest in officially publishing and supporting a Linux title. A port could be up and running in a week or two, but there is so much work to do beyond that for official support. The conventional wisdom is that native Linux games are not a good market. id Software tested the conventional wisdom twice, with Quake Arena and Quake Live. The conventional wisdom proved correct. Arguments can be made that neither one was an optimal test case, but they were honest tries. If you fervently believe that there is an actual business case to be made for Linux ports, you can make a business offer to a publisher, offer a guarantee, and be willing to do the work and support. This is what Aspire does for the Mac and what Loki did for Linux. However, you probably can't even get an email returned if you are offering less than 6 figures to a top 10 publisher. This may sound ridiculous. Who would turn away 20 grand? But the reality is that many of the same legal, financial, executive, and support resources need to be brought to bear on every single deal, regardless of size, and taking time away from something that is in the tens of millions of dollar range is often not justifiable. I truly do feel that emulation of some sort is a proper technical direction for gaming on Linux. It is obviously pragmatic in the range of possible support, but it shouldn't have the technical stigma that it does. There really isn't much of anything special that a native port does. We still make OpenGL calls, WinSockets just BSD sockets, Windows threads become P threads, and the translation of input and audio interfaces don't make much difference. Xinput and Xaudio 2 are good APIs. A good shim layer should have far less impact on performance than the variability in driver quality. Translating from D3D to OpenGL would involve more inefficiencies, but figuring out exactly what the difficulties are and making some form of D3D interop extension for OpenGL to smooth it out is a lot easier than making dozens of completely refactored high-performance native ports. Ideally, following a set of best practice guidelines could allow developers to get Linux versions with little more effort than supporting, say, Windows XP. Properly evangelized with Steam as a monetized distribution platform, this is a plausible path forward, which has been the basis for what we are all about here on Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming. Look, we started this up because we thought that no tucks, no bucks didn't make any sense for Linux gaming. The market's just not big enough, folks. The market's not big enough. And if you take a look at the numbers that come up on the Steam charts, and yeah, I know there could be problems, there could be issues, it's underrepresented or whatever, but fine, let's call it 2%. 2% is still very small. And you're not gonna get big time ports of meaningful AAA games, the ones that cost the most to make and the ones that we are missing the most, and why people are not coming to our platform. You're not going to get those. You're not going to get those with 2% of the market. So when we were thinking about launching up Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming, we used that naming mechanism, like the Mostly Linux, on to basically destigmatize this idea that I am a gamer and I have to be so hardcore that I only lose Linux forever and ever and ever, even though I can dual boot Windows or run Lutris or do whatever else I can, run a virtual machine and get a better gaming experience. And our view was pragmatic. If you can get a better gaming experience by dual booting Windows and running your games there, or using a PS4 or an Xbox One or a Switch or any other platform, do it. Do it. Encourage others to do it, because growing the base is the most important imperative to having a robust Linux gaming universe. So we started up Mostly Linux on Mostly Gaming with that in mind. And we've been all about that. We talk an awful lot here about Lutris and about dual booting. We ran an episode where we ran Windows. And we showed you how to properly set up a dual boot so that your Linux partition would access all of the games from your Windows partition and you wouldn't have to load them up again. And that was actually one of our most popular episodes. And so now what Valve has done is basically what we have been calling for. And what I find interesting, clearly they didn't listen to me and do it, of course, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is what we've been calling for, and we are happy that they have done it. Now, the key issue here is, where is it going to go, and what is it going to do to native Linux gaming? Those are actually, I misspoke. Those are the secondary issues. The key issue is, can we get this to grow Linux gaming? And I think we can. I think it's not going to happen day one, but this is day one. And I can already run a bunch of games right on my Steam client in Linux that I couldn't run before. I'm running Doom perfectly. I just actually launched up one of the games that I've been playing for a while now, and it's been frustrating because I couldn't get it to work on Linux, on Lutris. It was glitchy, controllers weren't working, and I haven't been playing it as a result because I don't want to load into Windows. I had a dual boot. But Final Fantasy 12, it's working. It's working better than it has ever worked before. And I'm not saying that's the case for every game. But for that game, that works better. And so I did a big thing. This week. I deleted my Windows partition. And I've gone all Linux. I have decided, I did, test out Manjaro, but decided to go back to Antergos for a variety of reasons. I won't get into them right here, but I like Antergos, and I just got rid of it. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to basically try to use whatever tools I have available on Linux for the next little while and see if I can make a go of it. I would never advise anybody that is not, really hardcore to do this. For most people out there, like, you can probably reduce the size of your Windows partition, but I would keep it there to be able to run your games over there. And hopefully over time, as more and more games basically become compatible that Windows partition can shrink and shrink and shrink to the point where it will disappear. And one of the, I have an Xbox. I've had an Xbox since day one. I've got the original Xbox right here as well, still hooked up to my machine. And Microsoft has had a tremendous amount of success with their what they call backwards compatibility, which is exactly what it is, because the Xbox One X uses different architecture than the Xbox 360 or the Xbox OG, the original Xbox. And so they initiated a backwards compatibility layer, and over time, the number of games that work in Xbox on the Xbox One X or the Xbox One has grown and grown and grown. And while today it's not 100%, it is a huge library and a huge benefit to people that have a big library of Xbox 360 games like myself, that they can now play them on their new machine. And recently, Microsoft added Xbox One original game backwards compatibility, and that list of games started off small, but it is growing. And I think that's what we're going to see here. You've got a pretty good list of games now on this platform that work. And that list is going to grow. I mean, we've already had an update to this beta in the first 2 or 3 days. The number of people that have been engaged in this project is incredible. I mean, this has invigorated the Linux gaming community. And what I find interesting is, those ninnies that, every time you post something somewhere, they say, oh, native only, no tucks, no bucks, you're supporting Microsoft. All of those guys, they've been overwhelmed by the massive number of us out there that are just pragmatic people that just like this operating system and would like it to do more. Play our games better. And we're not religious fanatics, over it. But in any case, so those are the benefits. I think what's going to happen here, and what I hope happens, is that list is going to go stronger. Valve is certainly pushing Vulkan actively. If you are a developer out there and you target the Vulkan API, your games will run on Linux like Doom does, which is perfectly. And Mac, by the way. You'll run on the Mac. Now, I guess Microsoft wants to push DirectX 12 and maybe whatever comes next. And one of the interesting things that we're going to find out here as the next generation of consoles, gaming consoles, comes up. And you guys have to understand the gaming console market, the combined gaming consoles, so PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, are a bigger market for gaming than the PC market is. And let me just kind of preempt that and say it's a bigger market than Steam is. So Valve has a big market, of course, but those are bigger, and it'll be interesting to see how they go, because it is certain that, and I don't know for sure, but historically, Sony and Microsoft have gone with AMD GPUs and CPUs in their game machines, and so it'll be interesting to see how that ends up kind of going forward. You've got some new stuff with respect to ray tracing, which could be interesting, but Microsoft has an agenda, which is to push the Windows Store, the Xbox Store, and DirectX 12 or 13 or whatever comes next. And if you want to run your games on the Xbox, you're going to have to basically use DirectX, DirectX X, let's call it. Sony doesn't have that issue. And they heretofore are not using Vulkan as far as I am aware on the PlayStation 4. So it would be interesting to have, Valve and gamers maybe should be trying to push Sony to move to Vulkan. And maybe Sony would be interested in moving to Vulkan as an API for their games to offset, or maybe kind of compete with Microsoft a little bit, ding them back. And I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm not sure what kind of graphics API Sony uses right now. I mean, it can't be DirectX because would Microsoft wouldn't let them use it. Is it OpenGL? I don't know. That's a good question. If anybody knows, send me an email to mostly_linux@protonmail.com. Let me know what kind of API. But I could probably find that on the web a little later. But in any case, I think if we push for Vulkan, then we effectively are pushing now for Linux compatibility. I mean, that is what has happened here more than anything else, is that Linux compatibility has become Vulkan. And so what does this mean going forward? I think there's a couple of things. First of all, what does it mean for native Linux games? I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because driving the market and making it bigger, it's a good thing to the extent that we get more Linux gamers. If there are more Linux gamers, you are going to have people interested in buying Linux native games. And to the extent that they perform better, which right now they do, you're going to want to get the best performance out of your machine. So I think getting a bigger user base is kind of, job one. And if you can basically accomplish that, a rising tide lifts all boats, let's say. I think we're going to see a new Steam machine. And I think we're going to see that launching with SteamOS 3. We've seen all sorts of different things happening out there that Valve is doing, okay? And there was lots of noise that was kind of swirling around as this announcement came out. And we know that there is a new Steam interface coming, we know that there is a new Steam OS coming out. It's been named Clockwork. We know that they have this compatibility this Steam Play compatibility now. We know that they're increasing the number of games that are on the compatibility list, and this is a beta to get everybody out there to test them for them. So what if there's a new console launch coming? Steam Machine 2 that has access to the Linux library plus Steam Play compatibility. Could that work? I think it might. I think the issue there is that you have to have a value proposition, right? So you can't, aside from the fact that, the first Steam Machine kind of interface and value proposition was iffy, right? You got to pay more for worse performance, and on a system that allows you to do less. That doesn't make any sense. Like, it just missed it on all chunks. And so now what we have is, you need to either be less expensive or you need to perform better at the same price, right? So that has to be the trade-off, or you have to be able to do stuff that you can't do on the other stuff, right? And Valve has launched Steam TV for streaming, Steam Play. a new Steam interface, a new Steam OS 3. I don't know. I think that makes sense to me. And I hope it comes out. And I hope that they are competitive. I think if you can basically put out a Steam machine that launches beside the next Xbox or the next PlayStation and is about the same price, about the same performance, but gives you access to this huge library of existing Linux games and then the stuff that comes out on Windows, I think it can do well. I think it can do well. And that's our Focus On topic this week. We'll be back in 10 seconds with some closing thoughts. Thanks for sticking with us here on Mostly Linux, on Mostly Gaming. Episode 0.22 is a wrap. Here's all the places you can find us if you are interested in getting in touch. You can find us on Twitter at mostly_Linux. You can find us on subreddit, where we have our own subreddit, r/mostly_Linux. We are on Twitch, Mostly Linux. We are on PeerTube as Mostly Linux, and we are on YouTube, along with your Apple iTunes podcasts, your Google Plays, your Stitchers, your whatever way you want to consume our content. We are here for you. Anyway, that's a wrap. Next week, we're going to be talking about our latest purchase, which is the NVIDIA 2080 Ti. That should be coming in a few weeks. We'll explain to you why we thought we wanted to jump on that right away next week. Have a great week. Be nice to yourself. Be nice to your friends. Be nice to your mother. And see you next week.